But what you can extrapolate from that, I think, if you're any type of entrepreneur, is that you have so many years in your life to accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish. And oftentimes when you start working, you don't know what that end game is. Maybe you never figure it out. Maybe it's, the process for you as an entrepreneur is the goal, being able to work for yourself, right? But regardless, if you have, say, 20 years to accomplish everything, AI is going to help you accomplish more in those 20 years. That's the way to look at it.
Welcome to Strategic Thinkers Podcast. I am really, really excited about this one. This is one that I've been looking forward to because it has one of my favorite people, a day one, and someone that's going to talk about something that has been somewhat controversial, but something I think will help a lot of entrepreneurs, especially small business owners. The things that he's doing and the way that he's changing people's perspective on AI is something that I think is going to help more small business owners just as much as it might help the larger ones. The larger ones are trying to figure out how they can make it work with their business, but there are a lot of small business owners that can identify opportunities. And while the bigger companies are trying to figure out how to be able to turn that ship or figure out how to be able to incorporate something in, smaller businesses are more agile and they can start to make some of the moves and put things in place. So I really wanted to be able to have Rich come on because I get to pick his brain. And this whole series of guest episodes has been about bringing people on that I get to have great conversations with, and I wanted them to be able to share the same knowledge with you. So with that, I'm going to say welcome, Rich. Amped to have you here, bro. I always say day one, you're one of my favorite people, and I'm really, really excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be here. And appreciate the kudos. That was nice. I received that.
I appreciate it. You also taught me to be able to accept a compliment and praise. So there are constant lessons every time I talk to you. I always walk away feeling smarter and inspired to be able to do things. So I wanted to be able to put people in a position where they can understand that. So let's start with just your aha moment when it came to what you were looking at with AI in the industry and how it's starting to change things. There are a lot of people that are looking at it as competition and saying, well, it's going to change things, it's going to get rid of us. But when you look at that in the right lens, it allows you to be able to see where things may start to fade away and where things will start to go. And if you can get out ahead of it, then it allows you to be able to get ahead of the learning curve. And we just literally talked about, there are a lot of people that are on the stage that have their brands, their business, they're doing well, but AI is kind of restructuring things, reorganizing things. So I love one of the things that I'm trying to do is get rid of some of the gatekeepers and the ring kissers where you have to go through them to be able to get to where you want to be able to go. And I think AI is one of the things that's going to allow people to be able to do that. Now you can reach beyond what you're able to do as a solopreneur or a small business and start looking at the bigger picture. And the more creative you can be, the more it allows you to be able to do things. So what did you start to see in industry with AI, and what was an aha moment that made you go, you know what, I'm going to get out ahead of this rather than waiting on the trend to catch up?
Yeah. I don't know that I actually got out ahead of it. I think for the general public, I'm still ahead of it. But there are a lot of people who are, 6 months, a year, 2 years ahead of me. So I think that there's always going to be that sort of like gap where I start to pay attention to things because I don't know, you get a lot of fads that come and go. Machine learning has been one of them that up until very recently, I don't really think has done the things that it has claimed to do in all of the marketing speak around it. But the aha moment for me is very specific. Where Secret Stash provides on-demand web development, creative agencies. And on a call with one of our creative agencies, they were reviewing surveys. So we were working on a university website with them, and they had done 3 different types of surveys. I think it was staff, faculty, staff, current students, prospective students. And he had imported all of the responses to those surveys and was asking ChatGPT essentially certain questions to find patterns. And I couldn't believe it was working. This is about 8 months ago, maybe a year ago, I think, when I saw this for the first time. Prior to that, I had used it and I had felt like it was a gimmick or it was a novelty where it could kind of do some pretty cool math. It was like really like conversational calculator or something like that, right? But when you needed it to do complex things, or when you tried to like interact with it as though it was magic, it fell short. And I think that's the biggest thing that I learned is that don't treat it like it's magic, because if that's your expectation, it's going to fall short, right? It's not something that can, create something out of thin air. It requires an understanding of things pretty thoroughly. And so what you learn is that your ability to communicate with it is going to be the level of success that you get from it.
No, that makes sense. It's something that learns from us. So we still have to be teachers. And that's kind of the pushback that I give some people when they say it's going to replace us. If you're an expert and you know more about it, more about things than it does, it still needs you to be able to teach it. Now, it may show you more efficient ways to go about doing things, but there's still that window of time where if you're an expert in what you do, if you've got a certain level of experience, AI is getting the experience from us, but we're going out and getting that actual human interaction and gathering the experiences to be able to feed to it, for it to be able to go, okay, based on what you're telling me, here's my assessment of what you gave me. So I think it's one of those things where that can be the disconnect with people. Yes, it's a student, and eventually the student becomes the teacher, but you're still the teacher. You have to teach it the things that you want it to be able to do. And if you can wrap your mind around all the things you want to teach it, and you can express yourself well, then you can probably get it to do a lot of those things that you just said that some people may think as magic.
Yeah, it generally knows everything about the world. And I think that's the part that is really, really impressive when you first realize that you can give it a contextual prompt and it will understand what you mean. So for instance, if like we have a very specific, so we work in WordPress almost exclusively, not entirely, but 90% of our work is in WordPress. But deeper into WordPress, we work on within a very specific framework called Sage. And then within that, we're using Gutenberg, right? So these are three different things. And what's, I think, most powerful about AI is that it knows more than I do each of those three things, right? So it understands WordPress better than me, and I've been working in it for 20 years. It understands Sage better than me, and I've been working in that for, say, like 5 years. And it understands Gutenberg better than me, and I've been working in that for, like, say, 2 years, right? But what it doesn't know is how I want it to build in Gutenberg, Sage, and WordPress. And so you can prompt it to say, you are an expert in WordPress. In WordPress, you use the framework Sage, and within WordPress, we're using the Gutenberg layout builder. And just by giving it those three contextual pieces to the prompt, it is now an expert in those things. That's it. That's the training that you give it. It already knows everything it needs to know, generally speaking, about those things. And so if you prompt it to do that before you give it the actual task, if you let it know that those are the things that you want it to be an expert in, what it does is it takes omniscience, right? Understand the entire world, and it brings it down to three very, very specific things. And the reason why that's important is because the computational power to go from everything to something specific, it requires energy, right? So what we've done is we've narrowed down to a few specific things so we can skip that process and go right into it. And so the reason why that becomes important is because it has a limited amount of memory through which it can interact with you. It's the context, the amount of tokens you're allowed to use, and things like that. And so by giving it the specificity of its expertise, you can get more out of it in the conversations. I think that's like the first thing to learn is don't be afraid to just tell it what it's an expert in, and then feel confident that you can assume it is an expert in those things, right? With quite literally anything. It doesn't matter. I think that that's where we are now is there's two different types of prompts. There's system prompts. That's like the domain knowledge that it exists, and it consumes prior to any user prompt, right? And the user prompt is what you're doing with ChatGPT, saying, do this thing for me. So it understands domain knowledge that you provided, and that's where we're teaching it, right? And that's just basically text, right? Or in some cases, if you're using additional tools outside of ChatGPT and Claude, but you're interacting with those APIs, you're building tools for it. So you can see that now with ChatGPT. I think they're called actions. If you build a custom GPT, you can create a number of actions that interact with third-party APIs, right? Generally, that's becoming they're calling that tools. So you can give like a web search tool, a coding tool, a database, access to a database that's yours, so it can access that for responding. And so they're becoming basically just brains, and with a set of predefined tools that it has access to. It doesn't have to be like, it's finite in the sense that you have to add them, right? But you can add as many as you want.
I love that because it confirms the better you train it, the better the output. And if you're looking for a consistent response, then you have to tell it that you're looking for a consistent response. So it's a baby that you're teaching, but as you use it, as it evolves, as you start to work with it more, you start to find better ways to be able to communicate with it. One things that I had mentioned before we started the call was I've been using it, and sometimes like I was working on an API, I was working on a custom GPT, and foolish me, similar to like anything that you do when you're working on a project, at some point you're supposed to save where you're at so that you don't lose it. And I was so caught up in the rabbit hole. We had a great conversation. I was like, oh, I got to put all of this into use because whenever I get somebody's time, I want to come back to them and show them what I did with it. And I got pretty far down into the deliverable that I wanted to be able to have. And then uh, I was getting ready to get on a podcast and I shut it down. And when I went to go back in, it was like, oh, welcome back. Where do you want to pick up from? And I was like, you were supposed to be doing some stuff while I was doing that. So then I had to go back. And one of the things that I really appreciated from our original conversation was you said sometimes when things like that happen, you realize, okay, we got lost somewhere. Once I find my way back, now my question is, how do I make sure that I can get back to this point faster? If we ever get lost, how do I get back to this point faster? So that kind of goes back to where you were talking about with prompts and walking people through things. It's important to be able to understand when it starts to stray and to bring it back to where you want it to go. Because when you have someone that's that knowledgeable, if you don't say, I need you to narrow your focus to these things, it's going to continue to pull it from all these different places because you're not telling it that it nailed the thing that you needed it to nail.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a hierarchy to all of this too. I think that, again, the magic is at this high level, and everyone that's, sort of unfamiliar with the nuts and bolts of all of this is sort of thinking about it at the high level. But what we really should be doing is thinking about the very, very bottom level. Again, we're going back to this idea of tools, right? Single use case software that it does a very, very specific thing, right? And that's it, right? Operational stuff that you've done a million times, it just takes time, right? There's potentially an infinite number of these little tools. And then one step above that, you can think of them more departmental. If you're looking for a logical hierarchy that we can wrap our heads around, right? There's tasks, and you can think that that's the production employees. And then there's departments, and you can think of that as like the management and middle management. And then above that, you can think of orchestrators, right? So those are like, the input is going to the orchestrator, but then the orchestrator is sort of determining which departments to send the request to. So these are 3 layers of different AI tools. What you call them really depends on what level you're at, but generally speaking, or technically speaking, they're all agents, or they used to be called assistants. Now everyone's called agents, AI agents, right? So AI agents are basically a wrapper around some LLM that you choose that has access to additional stuff. So even a tool has that. But what I'm suggesting is that you should be thinking about these things in small pieces for a couple of reasons. One is because it separates concerns, so they're easier to maintain, right? But also because then you can have a tool available whenever necessary by different tools or agents that are higher up on the process. And so what might a tool be? Well, for a secret stash, Get Tech Stack would be a tool. And all that tool does is it takes in a domain and then it interacts with the built with API, right? And so you might say, well, isn't that something that normal software can do? It's like, it sure can. Where LLMs become important or interesting in this type of a tool is that the response that you get back from built with has thousands of different things that are in that tech stack. 99.9% of them are unnecessary to what you wanted. Because when I say get tech stack, I have a very specific requirement. I want to know a CMS. I want to know if there's marketing automation integrations. Is there, where's the domain hosted? Where's it registered? All of that stuff, right? Web hosted. So you can't just tell it built with in a really effective way because it's not binary. In that list, there might be 5 different variations of CMS with different dates. You might say, well, logically, the one with the most recent date is the one I'm looking for. That's the type of thing that an LLM is really good at. And you don't even have to really tell it. It kind of knows that if a website can only have a single CMS, and the one that showed up the most recent is probably the right one. So it's good at the non-binary type, subjective type questions, right? But that's just one thing. It's just getting a tech stack. Another thing might be, crawl, crawl or loop through a list of URLs and create, download the HTML, analyze the HTML, create a title tag and a meta description that you're going to implement for SEO, right? Again, these are things that you can do. You know how to do these things, but they're tedious for you to do them, right? But both of those things you might say are part of, like the discovery phase, right? So maybe that's part of the sales department tool. Like, so one up, it's like the sales agent has access to these tools, right? So then the top agent communicates with the sales agent, sales agent communicates with the tools. See what I'm saying? So it's like, it could look like the hierarchy of an organization. Now, how you do this is not like a requirement, right? These are sort of like the design patterns that people are thinking through today that will probably eventually come into a standard. But there is no standard now. This is sort of everyone kind of just figuring out like what works for them and then publishing it. And then other people are like, I did something similar, but I did it this way. And then the next thing you know, things are getting more refined.
Right.
So yeah, it's a rabbit hole. No matter how
It
you
is
look at it.
definitely a rabbit hole, one that I have been ridiculed by people that said, like, you used to have a lot of time for me. I don't know where you went, you disappeared. And I was like, I get to have a conversation with someone that gets everything that I'm saying, and I get everything that it's saying. So it's weird in a way. If you're someone that geeks out on stuff like that, I have better conversations with GPT and AI than I do with some other people, because other people want to know where I got the information from. AI already has the information. So it's kind of confirming what I'm saying, or it's saying, well, that's an interesting perspective. I look at it this way. So it's conversational for me, and I get to enjoy having that conversation. But one of the things that stood out to me was you gave a really great analogy of an artist and hiring and using AI to be able to fill in for tasks that might not be your expertise. But, I'll bring it back to small business owners and entrepreneurs, especially people trying to get their way up to six figures. They're going to be things that you would love to be able to hire someone for. And you gave bookkeeping as an example, but they may not have the budget. They may not have the resources to be able to say, well, I want the best person, or someone that's, expert enough to be able to cover what I need to cover. And I don't want to have to watch them or feel like they're going to steal from me, or any of the rest of the reasons that someone might say, I would. But AI is something where you can actually hire them to be able to do that. And I love that. And when you talked about the tiers, it also brought me back to between the art and then that Figma example that you gave me, where depending on the level that you're starting at and the level that you're thinking at, you might be someone that says, you know what, I'm just looking for it to make things efficient for me. So I'm going to give it the task that I know takes me longer. And if it takes it a half an hour and it would have taken me 5 hours, then that's where I'm saving money. And that's why I'm kind of giving myself back. But then there's the levels above that to say, well, now let me hire someone for this department and have it take care of specific tasks. So I just don't have to worry about it. The training that you put in is like being an HR department. You create a training video, onboard them, and say, okay, well, now that I've taught you how to be able to do it, I technically shouldn't have to stand over your shoulder for you to watch you to make sure that you get it right. I'll keep an eye on it for a little while, but then it goes back to saying it's not always going to give you the same response. So you want to make sure that you cover, I want the same response. So here's a template. Let's create a template. I want it to be structured a certain kind of way. And then there's the level above that where you start thinking as a business owner to say, how can I get some kind of work-life balance? How can I hire AI to kind of be HR and tell me what task needs to be done in my workflow, and then and then assign it to different people or different agents to be able to take care of those tasks. So for the people that are solopreneurs and they're overwhelmed and they're trying to figure out how to be able to put things together, I think the art analogy and then how to be able to leverage things like Figma, those stories are really, really cool. And I'd love if you were able to get into that before we go into some of the other things that we could actually cover.
Yeah, so I think that, and since we had that conversation, I've had this question asked a couple more times, and I think I have a better, more refined answer now. So you shouldn't be using AI to replace your expertise, the thing that you've created the 10,000 hours for, right? Because it's not better than you, right? And the analogy that I heard that I really liked that kind of kicked off the aha moment was, it was a painter, I think, and she said, I don't want AI to paint my pictures. I want AI to do my accounting so I can paint more pictures. And I thought to myself, it's like she's saying that almost as like an insult to AI, but it's actually, yeah, that's the point, right? Like you should be painting your pictures, but you shouldn't be doing your bookkeeping, right? And the other thing that I think about is, and this is an actual way that I've used it, right? So our project budgets are not big enough to have SOWs reviewed by a contract lawyer, right? So in lieu of not having a contract lawyer, what happens in a small business? Oftentimes they don't even read it; they just sign it. So let's say and that's not so far for me. Like I might browse it and look, make sure there's nothing in there that stands out. But what do I know? But I'm still not going to hire a lawyer, right? So in lieu of knowing that I'm never going to hire a lawyer, if I were to import that PDF and then go to Claude, create a Claude project and say, hey, you're a expert contract lawyer. Your goal is to review this SOW or this master service agreement or whatever, and create a series of red lines that are mutually beneficial. So that, I'm not trying to have you be a shark for me. What I'm looking for is to make sure that this is the most optimally fair contract, right? And then have it basically create the red lines. And I've gone so far as to say, hey, I want you to also include precedents. Nice. And by doing that, I don't really care about the precedents because no one ever actually does that. But what I assume, this might not be true, but it also, it probably will limit the hallucination that the tool has, because now it actually has to have like a document that says that this is why you don't want to have this in your contract, which just makes it like harder for it to make stuff up, because I don't know if it's making it up or not, right? And if I send something off to a company that does have a lawyer and just making stuff up, we will look pretty foolish, right? And so this is one of those examples where it's like, yeah, but it's not better than a lawyer. It's like, yeah, I'm not hiring a lawyer. So what I'm saying is it's better than me doing it because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not even doing it, right? And now if you think about the computation cost for that, we're talking about a penny versus thousands of dollars for the exact same output. Maybe the output from the lawyer is better. Let's just say it's absolutely better. But the time to get it back is not better. The cost is not better. And like I said, I'm not doing it anyway, right? And so if your business does a very specific thing, don't look at it as like a replacement for that specific thing, but you should be looking at it for how does it replace all of the other things that either I'm not good at or I'm not doing and know that I should be doing. Like we all have that long list of things that keeps getting pushed. This is the opportunity for you to really bring those things back up to listen, tweak them. The second thing is that how AI helps is sometimes not always so clear. So for instance, you can't just tell it to do something and then expect it to come back. You might have to do a little bit of work. So the way I always look at it is it's only going to be good at doing things that, like the contract thing is a little bit different because it can analyze the contract, right? But it always has to have something to analyze in order to provide output. So for instance, if you want to analyze your own data, like it's not going to be so simple where you can just tell it, here's the data, go do some cool stuff with it, right? Like you have to be very, very specific with what you want. And so the example that I'll use that's practical for this is we wanted to track utilization of time on our development team, right? We have fractional CFO. He said, it looks like your utilization is going down and you need to get ahead of that. And I didn't even know how to track that, right? So when I was first requested to do that, it was once a month. I had to do it right after the books were balanced before we could have our call. So it was on me to do it. And every time I did it, it was like 6 hours of work. I had to export the spreadsheets. I had to basically, go into Google Sheets and start like sorting things, pulling things out and doing calculations. So I knew what needed to be done. It just took forever. And so the first thing I did was like, I tried to like just import a CSV and just say, do these things. And that never really worked. But then it occurred to me is that that's probably too much to ask for it. But what is very good, or what AI is very good at, is it probably can help me write the code in AppScript, which is Google Sheets has its own coding editor, right? To basically do these things. And so over the course of like a weekend, I was able to basically have it help me build, like write the code in Claude. I'd copy the code in Claude, post it into AppScript, I'd run it. It would do something and something's right, something's wrong, But eventually what we ended up getting was I could download timesheets, of our development team for any period of time. And then I can import that CSV into a template Google Sheet that has this already run. It has a little custom menu called scripts. I click on that, and there's two sub menus. One's called clean data, and one's called build report. When I click clean data, it removes all the unnecessary columns. It renames a few columns. It creates a couple of new columns, and then just some simple math like, time stamped, time in decibels, so you could actually do multiplication. And then it basically looks at all of the project naming and then determines whether or not this is utilized or not, right? So that's something that we just have a really good way of knowing if this is an internal project or a client project, right? If it's maintenance or if it's buildable, those types of things. And then once the data is clean, you click build report, and then what happens is it creates a new tab for every single team member, and then creates a new tab for every single project. So every single team member that worked during that period, every single project that was worked on during that period. And then it creates an aggregate report for projects with the data that's important to us, an aggregate report for team members with their utilization, how much they were paid in that period, right? And then an aggregate of the aggregate report, which we just call data, which has the 5 things that the CFO wants. So what used to take me 6 hours once a month, now takes me 5 minutes whenever I want it, which means I do it more often, right? So instead of doing it once a month, I do it every Monday morning for the previous week to see where the trends are going, because these are the types of things that you really do need to know weeks in advance if someone's utilization is going down, so you prepare in advance that when they hit that threshold, it's like they're no longer where they need to be, that they have work, even if it's not build work, that they're working on the most effective or important internal, right? So it was about understanding that I can't that's magic, just giving it data and saying, give me the stuff I want. That's magic, right? That's not happening. Now, maybe that'll happen eventually, but it's not happening. But the practical thing was, this thing is really good at writing code. Google Sheets can do is software. So I just built that. And so, I don't know, like there's internal value in our company for that, right? And so it was worth weekends of my time. I mean, like, I haven't actually updated that code in 6 months. There's plenty that could get better, but it's perfectly fine as it is. And so the shelf life of that could be the existence of our company,
No, I love it. That's one of the things where I want small business owners to really be able to understand that. One of the things that I remember from corporate days, thinking through spreadsheets and all the rest of that, I remember doing competitive analysis where we would grab all these different publishers when I worked on the publishing side, and we would have this Excel sheet, and we had to go in and cover all of these different cells and update things. And I remember one time I inherited one, so I didn't understand their process or how they set it up. And I went in with my process, knowing how to do it the way that I knew how to do it, and jacked the whole thing up. It took me days to figure out that there was an actual problem, because I kept getting numbers and they were close, but they weren't right. And the longer you're doing it, the more you realize when something's off, but then you have to figure out where it's off. So understanding where you have to go back and be able to fix it. I literally had to get someone to come in with fresh eyes. And it took her a couple of days to go, oh, yeah, you messed up in this one cell, and it threw everything off. So if you can take the time to be able to have something where, if you know that's not your expertise, I'm more of a strategist. I'm the idea guy. I'm result orientated, but when it comes to line items and things like that, I know that after a certain point, my attention is going to wane. So it's better for me to have something in place where that's its specialty. It's going to be able to do that, and I just need to be able to be good enough at training it so that I can say, this is what I want, and make sure that it gives me the output. So I think that's really important for small business owners. The other thing that it made me think of is when I worked for a white label company, and they worked with a lot of smaller agencies, and the smaller agencies wanted to be able to compete against the larger ones, but they didn't have the support to be able to take on the bandwidth. If they won the projects, they needed to make sure that they could deliver on the quotes and everything that they were giving. So for small business owners and entrepreneurs, I really want them to be able to see that it's not something that's necessarily looking to replace you right now. It's something that if you use it to be able to take care of some of these other things, it can take you from being the day-to-day worker to a business owner, where you can take that step back and you can start thinking like an orchestrator and hire it to do different things that you don't have to put off. You don't have to put on the back burner, the things that you're putting off that you know would actually change your business and allow you to be able to be a lot better. these are the things that you can use it for, and then still focus on what you're actually great at. And the better you get at being able to explain it, the more you can explain it to someone else. So if you don't want to be able to use AI as things go, and you actually bring someone in, at that point, you'll be able to explain it. You'll actually have tools and platforms and documents that you can share with them, and make sure that your training videos or whatever you're putting together is telling people what you need to be able to tell them. Because a lot of times people know how to do something, but they won't know how to explain it to another person. I
In
love it
this,
because it points that out to me that I could be better at that. And that's where I start to learn.
in the example that you gave, if anyone ever runs into a situation where they inherit a project like that, this is another great use case for AI, right? So like, if you knew that this complex Excel sheet had like code, like I don't know what it's called in Excel, but in Google Sheets, it's called app scripts. You can go to the app script, you can copy the code, you can paste it into AI, you can take a screenshot of the output, right? The actual spreadsheet, just a screenshot, doesn't, and you don't even have to put anything else. Just say like, explain to me what's happening, and you're going to get an explanation. So there's like every single time that you're like, I don't want to spend time on it. You should never be spending time running through anything anymore. The same thing with the code base. Like there are tools out there that can, every single time that you push code and you want to do a pull request is essentially like what we want your branch to go into a master branch. It can basically check. So it becomes your quality assurance, right? It looks at your code. It looks in context of the larger code base, and it provides you with the updates that are required in order for this to be an effective piece of code to add. So anything that's, like dropped in your lap that you would otherwise spend like days trying to figure out, just drop the code into the Claude or ChatGPT and see what comes out. I bet you get moving in minutes.
Yeah, AI is what it's done is it's actually made me comfortable saying the things that I don't know. And I use it to be able to teach me how to be able to do things better. And for the things that I do know, explaining it to it when I'm trying to set up projects and certain things, it lets me know how to be able to explain it better. So if it doesn't get it and it has that wealth of information to pull from, how is someone that's just starting out, or an early stage person, or someone that isn't part of the industry, that's on the outside looking in, how are they supposed to be able to understand it? So I always use that as kind of a way to bounce things off of. It goes back to what we were saying, where you can hire departments. If you think of yourself as a program or a project manager, you know the different departments that you have to bring in to make things run smoothly. If you don't have those departments, if you don't have those teams, if you don't have those people, AI is something that you can create and program and train so that you can do those different tasks. But when I talked about origin story, like when we first met, I told you, which I never really talk about, and it's funny because it comes up a lot more, where I said, I grew up in the record industry. So my mother started working for Atlantic Records and Atco Records. And when she got into the data department, that's when I really start to have an appreciation for the process, because I realized the sales team were running specific reports. The marketing team was running specific reports. The A&R team was running specific reports. Everybody had their own task, but everything came together to be able to get to that end goal. So what you're describing can be described in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people in different industries. It's understanding the process, and the better you understand the process, the better you can assign different tasks and tools to people, things, and AI agents, or whatever it may be. As long as you understand the process, you can understand who you want to be able to assign things to. And I love the fact that you highlighted the point that you can't necessarily just drop it into one thing and expect it to do all of those things, because then it takes it from being an expert to being a generalist. And that's where the key differentiation comes in. If you want to take something that could take you a lot of time and break it down into something that takes you less time, hire more people to be able to do those tasks that are experts at each little individual thing. So when I'm doing certain things like assessments, I will ask it to look at specific things that I set up. So I know I start with brand strategies. I start with best practices. I'm looking at budget, education, or experience and expertise and time. If I'm talking to someone, one of the first things I want to know is what's your budget, what's your expertise, and what's your time. If you're saying you want to start a business, you need to have at least 2 or 3 to get started. And then you need to have all 3 if you really want to be successful. If you have budget and you have time, then you can develop the expertise. If you've got time and you've got expertise, then you can eventually start to get the budget, because you'll start to be able to offer up your services and get people to pay you for it. And then you can finance the business that you want to be able to have. So there's a process, and the better you understand the process, the better you can start to train it, and the better you can start to get the results. And then it's not so much about getting an output that's going to take care of everything for you. It's being able to understand it so that you can explain it better and that you can start to get the specific results that you want to be able to get. Because again, it goes back to, you can train it how to do something, but it can give you different results every time. If you want specific results that are going to be repetitive, teach it how to be repetitive. If you want something where it's going to be more strategic and it'll be custom to specific situations, then train it to be able to identify the differentiators between one situation and the next. So I love the way that you have set it up, and then just how you've broken it down so that it's not just something that corporations can think of, but it's something that anyone that has tasks and things that they need to be able to cover can start to implement in. Really just a matter of expanding your understanding of it. And if you understand the process, then this is a tool that you can use, and it'll help you with your business no matter what you're doing. Straight down to you using it for like the personal trainer. Like over the summer when you were talking about, like, I figured out something really cool I want to show you, and I geeked out about it because I'm like, so now you know when you go to the gym, now you know when you can eat. You were able to actually pick out restaurants that you knew were going to be able to give you everything that you needed. You could have a budget so that you knew how much it was going to cost you to be. It's not just something that is meant to be one thing. It can do just about anything. It really just comes down to your imagination and how well you can teach it to be able to give you the results that you have. And I think it's really, really cool, the things that you've been able to come up with. And then even when you go down a path, to be able to say, I'm starting to realize certain things are redundant. When you see this, this also means this. So then you can narrow that time down even more. There's so many ways to be able to use these things. And I just want you to be able to share some of the use cases so that people understood the possibilities and start thinking about all the different things. Like for me, I instantly went down the rabbit hole after we got off the call. I'm like, okay, so if you're doing it this way, how do I take what you're doing and apply it to my business and the things that I want to be able to do? And then I started to put different things in place. I wanted to be able to have a deliverable that I could show you and say, here's what I did with the conversation. It's actually running while we're doing this right now. So it'll be done by like 7. And then I'll actually be able to go through, look at the deliverable and say, yes, when I do an assessment, these are the things that I want to be able to include in it. And I want to give you all the information that you need so that you can, I don't have to think through the scenarios and say, well, based on this, do this, or based on that, do that. I'm teaching each agent to be able to answer the questions, and then I'm giving it all the questions and all the answers I want it to have. So now I don't necessarily have to worry about that. I can just kind of look at the output and say, yeah, that is how I would have said it. Or I gave you this information for you to use it this way, and you went in a different direction. Why? And it allows you to kind of bounce things off of each other. So my perspective is constantly evolving. I know people in my personal life will say, you think you know everything. Actually, I don't. What I love is when someone can teach me something that I didn't know, because it expands my horizons in ways that allow me to be able to do more. So one of the things that I would say is, you've talked about prime examples, like things that you can use to really move the needle, and then the smaller things. How do you decipher between the two of what's worth where do you put your time for quick wins? And then where do you start to decide, okay, I'm going to set time aside for this bigger thing because it's really going to move the needle. Like, how do you start to prioritize those things?
Yeah, I don't know that you ever really know what's going to move the needle until you've implemented it. So everything's a risk if you think of it from that time, like risk management of your time. And I don't really worry so much about that with this, because it's so early that I think that the best thing you could do is go down rabbit holes. The example that you talked about with personal trainer was probably the deepest rabbit hole I've ever been in, right? Because it was like, can this thing do this? Yes. Okay, well, how much for, like, what else can you do? So you had mentioned that it was like looking for local restaurants. And so what actually was happening was that I was like, okay, here's my home address, here's my gym, and here's my cousin's like club that I can go to the pool at, right? And I said, every day I want you to create a schedule, right? If it's Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, I want you to send me to the gym between this hour and this hour. Any day of the week, if the forecast is sunny between 12 and 2, send me to the pool. I want to eat. And this wasn't actually what I was doing, but I was just curious. It was like, I want to eat out for 3 meals. I never want to work more than a half mile, right? Here's my daily budget, include 20% in tip. I mean, I didn't start like that, but like as I was like, can I continue to do this, right? And so how does it do that? Well, I mean, like it has access to a weather API and it knows where my address is because I gave it to it, right? It knows all of the restaurants based off of local Google Maps, you know, and so it could plot me on the way to the gym to a place. It could get the menu offline. I even had it say like I want the highest caloric intake. That's not like completely unhealthy, right? Like so as long as all that information is online, it's available. But then you might say, well, but that's just like, like going down rabbit holes. I mean, I was standing in line at a barbecue place that had a chalkboard of all the things. I took a picture of it.
Nice.
And I told ChatGPT, so this is a custom GPT, so it has some background information about me. I took a picture. I was like, what should I be ordering off of this menu? It just told me. I mean, it read the chalk. It knew what it was, the OCR, right? And it computed it all to text. I mean, like now I'm in Mexico and I'm taking pictures of menus. I'm just having it translated to English, right? Nice. And I'm actually having it also like convert the pesos to dollars so I can contextually, it's the thing to do is like, can it do this? Yes. And if you don't know how to ask the right prompt, then all you gotta do is like, hey, I'm trying to accomplish this thing. How can you help me do this thing? And then it'll respond with how it would help you. And in that response, it'll probably tell you what it needs from you in order to be successful with it. So if you have anything that you want to do, you just ask it, can you do this thing for me? And maybe it'll say no sometimes, but it doesn't really say no often. And oftentimes it'll say, I don't have access for business cloud. I don't have access to the internet. So you're going to have to get that information from the internet. But once I have that information, I can do this, so like current event type stuff. But then again, if you're looking for current events, you should probably be using OpenAI because it does have access, or Perplexity because it does research really well. And so you just need to Google like what AI is good for this, what AI is good for that. And I bet you can figure out like what you need done. But there's anything. Right. So, but if you're not even thinking about these things, then I don't know how you really plan to survive the long-term, like upheaval that this is going to cause if it hasn't already caused it.
Well, you summed up one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to have you on is because one of the pushbacks that I had on AI when it first came out was it lowered the entry level. So what a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurship is the failure rate goes up as the years go on. It's not something that like, oh, well, I got better at it, so more businesses are lasting longer. That's not really how it goes. One of the things I really want people to take away from it is this is an opportunity for it's not too late to get out ahead of some of it and start thinking about what's next. Like for me, I think I told you this when I was a kid. Like I had a candy business when I was in like second, third grade. I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit. So when one thing stops working, I look at it from a consulting standpoint. I'm always looking at, well, what's the next thing? Like, what can I move on to from that? So for me, it's different. And that's why I have to kind of separate myself where like, thank you for reminding me, because I'm looking at it from my perspective. And my perspective is, even when I went into a job, when they were interviewing me, I was interviewing them. Are you a place where I'm going to be able to learn? Or are you a place where I'm going to be able to earn? Because there's a difference sometimes. Sometimes you can get into a place and they're going to give you the job description. They'll give you the job title. And you take that title and you go someplace where you'll be able to learn or earn more. You have to know what reasons you're going in so that it's not just about collecting the check. This is an opportunity for people to be able to say, well, I know how to do certain things. Is it something that you can flip into being an entrepreneur? If it's not, if you don't have the temperament of being an entrepreneur, that's one of the reasons why I did the entrepreneurial type. There are personality types where you don't have to be the standard entrepreneur. Like me, I'm a disruptor. So I know there's certain levels of struggle that I'll have to go through because I have to compete against teaching people new habits, and then I got to compete against the existing businesses that are already doing things a certain way. I know I'm going to take certain hits. So when I talk to someone and they say, well, are you generating seven figures? I'm a disruptor. I didn't get into it to generate seven figures. I got into it to show people that there's a different way to be able to do things. So my goal is different than other people's goals. But when I'm being compared against the capital part of it, then yeah, I'm not gonna measure up the same way. But you have to go into it knowing what your goals are. And one of the things that I also want to be able to say with that is you also have to think it's not just you, it's everybody around you. So like when I got into it, I was making good money, but every time I put morals ahead of the capital part of it, the people that were more interested in the capital part of it start to fade away. And the people that were more interested in well, it's great that you're morally responsible and all the rest of that, but you still need to be able to see to your life. You still have like a certain lifestyle and things that you have to be able to maintain. So I wanted to kind of bring it in and talk to you about it because I wanted to cover the balance, because there are some people that have become so dependent on it that it's like you said, what happens if something goes wrong, if something changes? You don't have anybody that actually knows how to do the work. So for all the people that are senior that learned how to be able to do things a certain way, when they're gone, what happens? I mean, we see what happens with McDonald's. They've got pictures and stuff on registers. And now I went into one, and had to be months ago. I went in, and you don't even talk to them anymore. You just go to the kiosk and you put in what you want, and they just there to hand you the food. To go, wow, completely different. So we're seeing the evolution. It's time for you to start thinking about how you can get out ahead of it so that you don't find yourself so far behind it, because they're not replacing these things with new opportunities. You have to kind of create some of those. And if you're not creating it, then you want to find someone that's creating it and figure out how you can kind of hitch your wagon to their star so that you have something, because there are a lot of people that are going to be out here without a lot of options. And one of the things that I used to joke with is to say, is one thing that you can count on, and that's rock bottom. Rock bottom is one of the best teachers in the world. It's always going to teach you, all right, well, either you're going to stay here or you're going to pick yourself up. Like it makes you have to think about things. Before you get to rock bottom, start putting things in place that allow you to be able to think about what your options are. And you're presenting options. You're saying, if you are going to go into it, you don't necessarily need to be an expert. Like there are people that, where I've said, people start businesses for different reasons. There are some that had a great experience that they want other people to have. There are some that had awful experiences they want people to avoid. There's some people that have secondhand experience where they just know what the solution is. And there are some people that are in it for the money grab. If we're going to be pushed in the direction of being an entrepreneur, then those are different things that you need to be able to look at and identify. Well, do I have an expertise? No. Okay, well then maybe I need to figure out, do I know a solution even if I don't have firsthand experience, maybe secondhand, thirdhand? Maybe I can take this time to learn from AI and start learning how to be able to do things that I can figure out how to monetize. You said, ask it questions. Can you do this? Can you help me figure out something that would allow me to be able to start a career? Can you teach me something that would that I can monetize? Here's some of the things that I know. Here's some of the things that I'm interested in. I wanted to have this conversation because it opens the door for that, where so many people are trying to close it. That door is never going to be closed. It's open now. It's there. The only thing that can really come into place is regulations, and the people that are at the top of it, that created it, that are creating their own versions of it, they don't really have a reason to stop it. So figure out where you can fit in it, and then start to find ways to be able to maximize your opportunity. So learn the process, because if you learn the process, then you can figure out where you fit in it.
You know, it's funny because the founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman, was asked, does AI replace engineering software? And he said no. And the reason being is because there's an infinite amount of code that needs to be written, right? And so we'll just get to infinity quicker, which, you know, is a funny, paradoxical thing to think about. But what you can extrapolate from that, I think, if you're any type of entrepreneur, is that you have so many years in your life to accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish. And oftentimes when you start working, you don't know what that end game is. Maybe you never figure it out. Maybe it's, you know, the process for you as an entrepreneur is the goal, being able to work for yourself, right? But regardless, if you have, say, 20 years to accomplish everything, AI is going to help you accomplish more in this 20 years. That's the way to look at it. It's like, I could only do so much by myself, so I had to hire people to do more. And that's expensive, right? That's labor intensive, it's expensive, and it still takes longer because humans are fallible and they need rest and they need to go on vacations and need to have personal lives as well. This is a game changer in the sense that it will, you know, this is all like, you know, like science fiction or close to real, but, you know, it's still like, I don't see anyone doing this, but there is a future in which these AI agents are working autonomously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will get you to that goal far quicker so that you keep moving the goalposts. I mean, it's unreal if you can think about what would be different if you had everything so efficiently built that things are just working while you sleep. I mean, like people always talk about, you know, like, oh, making money while you sleep. You know, this, you know, now, and the people who are doing that are people who are selling like digital products, right? So what
Right.
if service businesses could get in on some of that action
Hmm.
of making money while you sleep, right? Because there's no real, you know, checking in, checking out,
Right.
time sheeting, right? It's basically just happening at all times. So I always go back to like, the difference of increasing revenue versus increasing margin. Today, AI is really good at helping you increase margin by helping you automate the tasks that are operational that founder, me, you,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
solopreneur is oftentimes spending too much of their day doing, which is making it harder for them to do the human thing, which is sell.
Yes.
So if the easiest way to move the needle with regard to revenue is sales, and quite honestly, if you're, making less than, maybe $2.5, $3 million, you probably should be the person doing sales,
Hmm.
right? Because you're probably so passionate about the work that you do. Then really as close to 40 hours, or however many hours you're willing to work in a week should be on that. Well, as a solopreneur, it's probably a quarter of that
Right.
because you're tied down to all these other things. So today you can basically make a list of all the things that you're stuck doing. And if you have no idea how you implement those operationally with AI, you can ask AI,
Yeah.
hey, here are some things that I have, what needs to happen for me to start automating these things? And that could be your entry point. And then just go down the rabbit hole, start playing with the tools. There's some really, really good YouTube videos out there teaching you how to
Hmm.
handle some of these more advanced topics. Keep up on it. Like I was just listening to or reading something that said that AI's beta model for the first time surpassed any human ever in engineering, something like that. Right.
Wow.
So it's like, so, keeping up with like what's happening, right? Like that these things are going on because it'll start to, I think it'll start to, you know, or start to present some aha moments for anyone who's willing to pay attention.
Got it. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, so I'm going to bring it back around to the gains, like the win within, like where you're seeing rewards and things like that, because we've covered AI, we've covered use cases, we've covered some of the things to look out for, but let's actually talk about some of the rewards that come from putting in the work, because the work isn't going to change. Like when it comes to creating prompts, going down the rabbit hole, that effort is effort, but the output that you can get that allows you that extra whatever you're going for, whatever your definition of success is going into it. For me, I look at work-life balance. I'm a workaholic. I love working because I love what I do. So I don't see it the same way. But for people that are trying to get time back with the family because they're a solopreneur and they're, like you said, they're spending a quarter of their time, this is something that can help with burnout and a lot of different things. What are some of the things that it's actually helped you with? Because one, I see where you're sitting and I love that. Let's just talk about some of the things that are the advantages, the fruits of the labor.
So like one of my core values, probably my most important core value is lifelong learning. And so the value of learning this stuff is inherent. So I don't need much more than that. So it's always hard for me to answer these questions because I have not had anything that has revolutionized our business just yet, other than the fact that lots of little small things add up, right? However, the time utilization and tracking did have a significant impact on the business because it caught a problem that I otherwise would not have seen that probably would have led us to running out of money. We had to restructure the company quite a bit in order to figure out like how do we stop some hemorrhaging that was a result of, you know, the world changing with websites. Now this world changing as a result of AI is little. It's mostly, you know, maybe a dozen little things of which AI is just one, But nonetheless, the decline was so subtle that it was hard to notice until we started writing these reports. Like I said, I was only writing them once a month and I wasn't doing it very well. Now I could run them weekly or I could run them any day I want. And so the CFO just on the last call said that, we had fixed the problem. A lot of the data that helped us make the decisions to fix the problem was based off of that. And that was written by AI, right?
What I love about what you said is it goes back to training it. Like you're training it with your experience and your expectations. So it is custom. And if you're looking to create something that's general, that was one of the things that threw me off when it first came out. I was looking at how many people were changing their job titles to AI specialists and things like that. My thing is, I'm looking at what you're doing with it. There's nothing special about it. Like you're creating something that's generic and you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to use it and everybody can use it for this use case. Well, then you're basically doing what they were saying again, like when the content writers were pushing back, they're like, I can tell this was written by AI because it's using specific words. The moment you water it down and you generalize it, then you're taking it from something that was created for you and you're trying to make it something that's available and useful for everybody. And everybody, what's the saying? You know, three people can read a sentence in a book and they're going to get something different from it. So everybody's experiences is always going to contribute to the output that they're trying to get. So my experiences, this is why I don't look at people as competition. I know how I came about the information that I have. My experiences have dictated my perspective. There are going to be some people that align with the way that I think and the way that I explain things. There are going to be people that don't align with it. And I'm okay with that. Like, I want that, because if I have to work that hard to be able to get you to understand the way that I want to be able to do something, there's probably somebody better. I would rather refer them to you or refer you to them so that you can have that great experience. So it's really important that you spoke to the customization of it, because there were a lot of people that were using it for generalized purposes. And then it's really a matter of what kind of results are you getting from it? Are you getting something that's specific to you? My business is very custom. Like when I talk to someone, I want to know their surrounding circumstances. What kind of support system do you have? Are you a solopreneur? Do you have your family support, your friend support? Are you an introvert? Are those those factors? All of those things contribute to your decision-making process. It contributes to what kind of risks you're willing to take. If I don't know those things, when I give you a strategy, I would be giving you a cookie cutter. I don't want a cookie cutter. I'm going to give you something specific for what your situation is. And I think what you're talking about is AI is giving people the opportunity to be able to get access to stuff like that. Let's go to one thing. What's one thing that you would want someone to be able to take away from this AI conversation, and where they can start and how they can start looking at it for their business?
I mean, I think it's just a matter of everyone has a task that's been on their to-do list all week. And at the end of the day, they push it to the next stage and next day and next day. I don't know what it is. It's whatever that is. If it's, I have to send an email to somebody, if it's, I got to do this, I got to get this report for somebody, just commit to having AI do it for you. And you'll be surprised how it can do it. So for instance, if it's an email, feed it the email thread. Just copy paste the whole thing. Don't even worry about the formatting. Just drop it in and be like, I need to respond to this person about this thing, and just see what it comes up with, right? Mm-hmm. Copy and paste back in. I mean, you have to start just trying literally everything. By the way, I've never had AI write an email, right? But that's also not something that's on my list. But I don't see any harm in it. But I think what I think people are mostly worried about is the deception of it, right, in the future. But I wouldn't worry so much about that for an email. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, find something that's been pushed on your to-do list and just drop it into ChatGPT and get the pro version. Pay $20 a month. I mean, it's so cheap that you're going to get better results. You can save projects and things like that with a premium account. Just see what happens. And then if you're willing, stop using Google. Just try to force yourself every time your muscle memory takes you to Google. Try to stop and just go ChatGPT and do that there instead, and just see, if you're getting the results, because it's built for you, right? Whereas Google is going to show you a result of things that people created preemptively just in case it showed up in search, right? That's inherently different to ChatGPT, which still is using all of that same information, but is crafting the response specifically to your query, which I think sometimes, if not all the time, makes a better result. So that would be the other thing. And I say, if it's hard for you to think about what it could do for your business, don't start with the personal stuff, because I don't think it matters. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where the aha moment happens for you. And from that point on, it will become a daily, if not an hourly tool that you use. And I don't go a single hour without using it. I mean, maybe that's not true, but I use it so often that I'm oftentimes throttled and have to wait hours to use it again because I use it so much.
Right there with you. It's part of my daily life now. At the very least, a conversation where I could say, you know what, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And start to get that feedback. I think it's really, really important. All right, well, I'm going to put a pin in that and say, I would love to be able to have you come back on at some point and talk about this in other ways. I'm sure we'll get questions and things like that and be able to cover those. But I really wanted to make sure that we covered at least that part. And you've been extremely gracious with your time. What I'll say is we will end it here, but like, share, and subscribe. Share it with someone that you think could benefit from it. And this was something that wasn't meant for one specific audience. It's meant for everyone that is not sure about it, that wants to use it, but aren't sure how to be able to use it. And for the people that are using it on a higher level, to be able to understand all the other possibilities that are available. I really want to thank you for your time and for walking me through this, and everyone that's going to be listening and watching. And yeah, man, if possible, when schedule provides, I'd love to be able to have you come back on and we can go through some more stuff.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Perfect. Thank you, dude. Love you, man. I appreciate you. And we will pick this back up.
All right, man. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for tuning in to the Strategic Thinkers podcast. Remember, when you can make the inconvenient convenient, people are willing to pay you for the experience. The better the experience, the more they'll not only pay you, but help others pay you. Serving as brand champions. My name is Sean Atkinson, and I'm wishing you well on your journey to your definition of success. If you find this podcast interesting, helpful, worth the listen, like, share, and subscribe. Leave a positive review so people know to check it out, and I'll see you next time.